The game began with a shocking condition. In front of her husband, a wife was supposed with another man. The amount of money involved was very high, which is why the man agreed. In the end, in front of 4 people, that man did something no one could have imagined. The story began when Craig Daniels, an auto mechanic, was spending an evening with his family when he opened his wallet. There was almost no money in it. He didn't say anything to his wife, but the worry stayed with him until the next morning. When Craig left for work, something outside his apartment caught his attention. Paper was stuck to his door. He walked closer and froze. It was an eviction notice, a legal warning that deeply shook him. Still, he pulled himself together and headed to the garage where he worked. Craig started his day as usual, leaning over engines, wiping sweat and grease from his face. Then a coworker came up to him and said his boss, Doug, wanted to talk to him. Craig went into the office and just a few moments later walked out unemployed. He didn't have the courage to go home. Feeling depressed, he called his wife and told her he would be late. He said he was going out for drinks with a friend. The truth was that after losing his job, he had no options left. That night, Craig went to a bar, sat at the counter, and tried to forget his troubles. Suddenly, someone grabbed him hard from behind. Startled, he turned around. It was Vince, an old friend he hadn't seen in 5 years. Vince laughed loudly and said he was just joking. Craig felt both relieved and surprised. Vince insisted on paying for the drinks, but Craig said he needed to leave. Vince wouldn't let him go and said, "It's been 5 years. I'm not letting you leave like this." They sat together, and Vince noticed how stressed Craig looked. When Vince asked what was wrong, Craig explained that he was now married and had a 15-month-old son named Keenan. He showed a picture of the baby, and Vince's face lit up. But Craig also admitted that his life wasn't easy. He had lost his job that very day and needed $4,500 to sort out his problems. Vince didn't have that much money, but he still wanted to help Craig somehow. Craig was overwhelmed, so he made an excuse to go to the bathroom. Inside, he noticed a strange-looking man, but he ignored him. When he returned, Vince was sitting with a wealthy couple, Violet and Colin. Craig went over and greeted them. Colin explained that it was Violet's birthday, and that was why they were celebrating. Then Colin ordered the bartender to bring a bottle of wine that cost $300. When the bartender brought it, Colin paid without hesitation. Craig watched quietly and realized how luxurious rich people's lives were. Violet happily took a group photo of everyone. Then the couple mentioned that they had placed a bet on a bald man at the bar, but Violet had won. After that, Colin started making bets with them. The first challenge was simple. The one who finished their wine first would win $50. Vince drank his wine without thinking and won. He handed the money to Craig, but Colin said the money belonged to Vince, and Vince immediately took it back. The games continued. Colin pointed to a very drunk woman in the club and offered $200 to whoever could annoy her enough to make her slap them. Craig didn't want to go near the woman, but Vince told Craig to go first. Nervously, Craig went, but the woman didn't slap him. Craig came back. Now it was Vince's turn. Vince went up to the woman and made fun of her. He joked, said a few things, and finally the woman slapped him hard. Vince returned with the prize money, smiling, and then suggested that they go to another club. Colin agreed. All 3 of them reached the next club, where Colin raised the stakes even higher. He pulled out $200 and challenged them to slap a girl inside the club. Craig clearly refused and even warned Vince not to do it. But Vince, as always full of excitement, ran over and slapped the girl. Chaos broke out. Laughing, they all ran outside. Craig had lost all patience. He said it was nice meeting them, but he was really going home now. Just then, a guard showed up. Colin made another bet and said that if Craig managed to provoke the guard, he could earn $500. Craig hesitated, but out of desperation, he stepped forward. Things went wrong, and Craig was knocked unconscious. When Craig regained consciousness, he was in a completely new place. He realized that the money he had won was still in his pocket. His nose was injured. Shocked, he understood that he had been brought to Colin and Violet's house. He checked his phone and saw that his wife had called him many times. He was stunned. So much time had passed. As Craig stepped outside, he saw Colin and Vince together, still having fun. Suddenly, Vince loudly played some music, which disturbed Craig even more. At Colin's request, the sound was turned off. Both of them said that Craig had shown great courage. Colin smiled and said that this night would stay with Craig forever, even if they never met again. He admitted that he had always wanted to experience something different and exciting. Feeling tired and uncomfortable, Craig quietly sat down. He started thinking about what kind of nights he was having to endure just for money. After that, Violet calmly came over to him, took care of him, and took a photo of him. She said she would send it to him later. Meanwhile, Colin showed Vince something mysterious, which deeply impressed Vince. Violet continued to look after Craig and asked him about his past experiences. Craig told her that once, while playing, he had gotten injured, but over time he no longer remembered the pain. Violet also shared a memory from her childhood. She used used to watch older kids skating and had developed a liking for one boy. One day, he was involved in a serious accident. As she told the story, Violet became emotional but quickly composed herself. Craig kept looking at her. It felt as though a deep connection was forming between the two of them. Just then, Colin came in and gave Craig some medicine, assuring him that he was safe. Later, he took Craig and Vince up to the rooftop and started talking. There, Vince jokingly did something that made Craig feel deeply humiliated, but the others took it lightly and laughed it off. Angry and embarrassed, Craig went to the bathroom to compose himself. Vince followed him. Craig expressed his frustration. Then, in a low voice, Vince revealed that he was planning to get money from the wealthy couple. He said that Colin had a lot of money and that it could be taken easily. Craig was shocked. He blurted out that he would not do anything wrong like that and that he only wanted to go home. But Vince said they needed the money and that Craig should just do as he said. Craig refused again and said it was far too risky because they all knew each other. Vince argued that Colin wouldn't want to get himself into any trouble anyway. Caught between fear and desperation, Craig finally agreed unwillingly. According to the plan, they started talking to Colin about the money. Colin stayed calm and said the safe was open, but he couldn't remember all the details. When Vince insisted, Colin said the money was nearby. Meanwhile, Craig held on to Colin's girlfriend so that she wouldn't interfere. Craig went to check and found a large amount of cash inside. He stuffed all the money into a bag and walked out of the room. Suddenly, everything changed. Colin attacked Vince and quickly gained control of him. Violet stood there holding a gun. Surprisingly, Colin didn't seem angry. Calmly, he said that the day was special and that he didn't want any bitterness, but he hadn't expected this from them. He added that if Vince and Craig wanted to leave, they were free to go. He didn't want to force them. But if they wanted the money, they would have to play a game. Vince became excited and agreed immediately. Colin explained the first game. Whoever could hold their breath the longest would win $500. At that moment, Craig's phone rang. His wife told him she knew the truth and wasn't angry. She just wanted Craig to come home so they could deal with everything together. Craig promised he would be home in 45 minutes and asked her to trust him. After the call, Colin handed Craig $200 and smiled, telling him to focus on the game. Vince grew irritated by this, but Craig pulled himself together and took part. Colin and Violet encouraged Craig, which made Vince even more uneasy. In frustration, Vince pushed Craig, causing him to lose the challenge. Craig protested, saying it was cheating. Calmly, Colin replied that Vince hadn't broken any rules because no rules had ever been stated. Vince was thrilled to receive the money. After that, Craig asked Colin what the next challenge was, saying he was ready. Colin took them outside. For the next challenge, he mentioned his neighbor's dog, which often ruined his lawn and shoes. He wanted revenge. He said that whoever threw dirt in front of the neighbor's house would win the money. They argued, but in the end, both Craig and Vince went to the neighbor's place. They entered the house. Craig threw dirt inside and left quickly. As Vince was leaving, the neighbor saw him and he lost the challenge. Craig returned first and collected his prize. Vince came back later with a neighbor's dog, but he had already lost. Still, Vince insisted on playing one more game. The next game began. Colin told Craig that if he spent time with Violet, he would receive $4,500, enough to pay his rent for the month. At first, Craig thought Colin was joking, but when Colin repeated the offer, Craig hesitated. Just then, Violet came over and encouraged him. Craig desperately needed the money. When he still refused, Colin began increasing the amount. Eventually, Craig agreed. Craig accepted the challenge and went to Violet. They began talking, slowly breaking the silence between them, while Vince and Colin watched from where they were sitting. Eventually, Craig awakened strong feelings in Violet, and the two grew very close. Seeing this, Vince exploded with anger. He felt humiliated, betrayed, and cheated by the unfairness of the game. Craig was broken inside and felt deep regret for betraying his wife's trust. Shaken, he quit the game and walked out. He decided that the money he already had would be enough to keep him from being evicted for now. After he left, Violet looked hurt. She had slowly begun to develop feelings for Craig. She went outside to look for him, but by then he was gone. In the end, Violet returned disappointed, carrying the realization that she had fallen in love with him. With Craig gone, the purpose of the game collapsed because everything had been arranged to please her. Violet fell silent. Meanwhile, Vince was determined to continue the game at any cost. He told Colin he would do whatever was asked. Colin smiled and proposed a shocking challenge, offering a huge amount of money. Vince hesitated and was almost ready to agree when Craig suddenly returned. Colin was pleased to see Craig again, but Violet's happiness was beyond words. Craig said he wanted his money back and was willing to continue playing, but only for a smaller amount. After bargaining, they finally agreed on a figure. Vince was angry, but helpless. Craig won again. The game became increasingly disturbing. Violet kept taking photos. Despite many difficulties, Craig continued to win, and Colin thoroughly enjoyed the spectacle. He kept pushing Craig to play on. Craig didn't have the courage, but his need for money forced him to continue. On the other hand, Vince had gone completely quiet. Seeing Craig's condition, he no longer liked where the game was heading. He tried to stop Craig from continuing, telling him there were other ways to survive. He reminded Craig that even if he had lost his job, he still had options, and that chasing money this way meant betraying his family. Just then, Colin returned with an even higher stakes game. Vince didn't want to play, but because the amount was so large, Craig sat down again. Seeing this, Vince had to sit as well. The game began. The challenge was even more distressing. Somehow, both managed to complete it, and the result ended in a tie. To decide the winner, Colin announced a final condition. Both rushed to complete it. Seeing this, Vince completely broke down, and his anger exploded as he went after Craig. Colin pulled Vince outside. Violet didn't like what she saw. Colin was turning them against each other for money. Outside, Colin pretended to calm Vince down, but instead filled his mind with more poison. He said Craig had always depended on Vince and was now betraying him. Colin offered Vince a massive sum of money. At first, Vince agreed out of greed, but when he stood face to face with his friend, he couldn't go through with it. He told Craig they should leave together and forget everything, but things had gone too far to be fixed. In the end, a tragic decision was made that ended everything. Colin calmly arranged for Craig to leave. Before he went, he gave Violet her share. In truth, the couple had been betting from the very beginning. Colin had chosen Vince, while Violet had chosen Craig. Broken, defeated, and emotionally shattered, Craig returned home with the money. As soon as he entered, his little son Keenan ran into his arms. Craig held him tightly, tears in his eyes. Then the light turned on, and his wife was standing there. She looked at Craig, at his condition, and the money scattered on the floor. A heavy silence filled the room, full of questions Craig had no answers for. And with that, the movie ended.